Hey everyone, this is Stove here, and we are now on to week 9 of college football. And yeah, there's already been a few games that have already played last night and I believe the night before, and those were obviously the smaller conference games. Which we can go ahead and check out. Obviously, we had Kennesaw State beat Florida International, Kentucky actually winning in overtime against LT, MT or Middle Tennessee losing against Delaware, and Missouri State winning against New Mexico State. And then also having a back and forth between South Alabama and Georgia State. And obviously on tonight, obviously keep on saying obviously, my bad you guys. But on Friday, which is today, it is actually 12:50. But we have North Texas versus Charlotte. We have California at Virginia Tech and Boise State at Nevada. So obviously I'm gonna have to say Boise State wins Nevada. California, it's gonna be a little bit trickier, I feel like, because this is like the only one that could be a close game, whereas North Texas should have no problem beating Charlotte, just like Boise State should have no problem beating Nevada. But I do think Boise State will let a lot of points go. If they score more than 40 points, Nevada is going to score like more than 20. But California versus Virginia Tech, I will go with California just because they have been more consistent with their things. And Virginia Tech has just been having some problems throughout the year, whether it be offensive line or defense hasn't been too consistent throughout all the games that they've had so far. But yeah, so we're gonna go into Saturday now. We got UCLA versus Indiana. That's gonna be a no-brainer, even though UCLA had already upsetted Penn State. I really don't think that's gonna happen with Indiana. You got Syracuse versus Georgia Tech. Obviously, Syracuse had beaten Clemson, but at the same time, they haven't really won anything else in their conference, I believe, and Georgia Tech is the only undefeated, both in conference record and overall record. They are the only undefeated team in the ACC conference from last time I looked. But yeah, so I'm gonna definitely choose Georgia Tech there. Ole Miss versus Oklahoma. This is actually going to be a very good one here. Solid matchup for the SEC. Both in the top 15. Both trying to keep their spots, but because they were matched up this year anyway, one of these guys are going to stay in the top 10 or be in the top 10 by the end of this weekend, and one of them won't be in, unless Oklahoma is the one that wins. Then Ole Miss will probably be like either rank 13 or rank 15. But besides that, I do think Ole Miss will end up winning against Oklahoma. The only reason why I say that is because Ole Miss needs this win against Oklahoma. If Ole Miss starts crashing down, then they will more than likely, even though they have Alabama, I'm pretty sure Oklahoma is the one with Alabama. I believe so, because their schedule, last time I looked at their schedule, they had I think they had all ranked opponents left in their, okay, so it's Oklahoma, so never mind. Ole Miss does have a chance to still stay in the top 10. However, if Oklahoma, who is at home, upsets Ole Miss, you have that chance for Oklahoma, even though you could lose, say there's 5 teams left here. Every single team that Oklahoma is going to face in the next 5 weeks are top 25 ranked opponents, which is actually insane. But Oklahoma's strength of schedule is absolutely bonkers. And they say that Alabama or Georgia, no, right now Oklahoma is probably shooting for like the number one or at least top 3 strength of schedule right now in the last 5 weeks of the college football league, at least for regular season. Oklahoma, they beat Ole Miss, they get shot up to top 10. Then if they beat Tennessee, they go into Alabama more than likely in the top 6, more than likely. And if Alabama continues to win their games until they face Oklahoma, then it will be a very good matchup. It will probably be one of the best matchups that we've seen whenever it comes to rankings wise. But then even if they lose against Alabama, they still, as long as Missouri and LSU stay ranked, they still have that chance to still technically beat 2 other ranked teams and then proceed to hopefully have that shot in the college playoffs. Now, obviously, we looked at Oklahoma's, but what I have to say is about Ole Miss is that they don't have any of that. Right now, the only team left that they really have is Oklahoma. Like, I'm pretty sure that's it. The rest of them, you would probably say like Florida, University of Florida, and there's Mississippi State at the very end for Ole Miss. So right now, Ole Miss just needs to beat Oklahoma and then win by a good margin when it comes to the rest of those games. And then they can be like, hey, we're going to be in this top 10. We're shooting for hopefully even the top 6, just so we have that argument like, hey, you guys put us in the college playoffs. We're top 6 right now. And more than likely also still fighting for a chance to get into the SEC conference championship. And and that's the same thing with Oklahoma. So really these next 5 to 6 games, you're going to see something different. Or 4 to 5 games. You're going to see some different things happen, especially with these matchups being the way they are. Right now, Oklahoma absolutely needs this to get the ball rolling on the, 5 games. I don't see them winning all 5 of these ranked games. But if they can win against Ole Miss, then that's exactly the type of win that they need, especially it being at home, to then have to be like, okay, well, now we got to go to this place and win against Tennessee. Or no, they are going to stay home, hopefully win against Tennessee, and then have to go to Alabama to win in Alabama, which is going to be a very tough thing. But yeah, I would probably say Ole Miss is going to end up beating Oklahoma, but because Oklahoma is at home, there's a lot of an advantage for Oklahoma right now. And with that being said, I would have one side of my brain is literally saying Oklahoma because it would be very interesting. The fan side of me that doesn't necessarily want Oklahoma to be in the college playoffs and to see Ole Miss finally like have something where they beat a ranked team and then the rest of it they just have to look good, like score 40 plus points in every single last game, which for one of those games it shouldn't be no problem because it's like some random low level D1 or D2 D2, not D2, but it's like maybe it is D2, but it's like a low level D1 school that Ole Miss would be facing like towards the end of the year. But anyway, I'm going to have to say Ole Miss, but it won't shock me if Oklahoma wins at home. But anyway, so Virginia versus North Carolina even at home, unless they somehow stun Virginia, I don't necessarily see North Carolina doing anything against them. South Florida versus Mississippi. This could be a very good one for a lot of you guys to watch just because it is lower conference, but at the same time, it would be very interesting. You look at both of these records here. Memphis was in the top 25, and if they would have won their game last week, it would have been two top 25 teams from the same conference facing one another, which would have probably brought up a few more numbers. But still, South Florida is playing pretty well, so I think you guys should still take a look at South Florida and Mississippi anyway. Some solid players on both sides. Nebraska versus Northwestern. I'm going to go Nebraska there. Rutgers and Purdue. That's a little tough, but I'm actually going to go Rutgers. SMU versus Wake Forest. That's kind of like a little SMU, it is what it is. I would probably go with this. It would be a very close game, I feel like, unless like Wake Forest just gets all of this abundant energy from their own fans and stuff like that with them having the home game. But it would definitely be that close if SMU ends up winning. It'll probably end up being like a touchdown or less than 10 points. Kansas State versus Kansas, that's going to be a pretty good one, but I will have to say Kansas State will end up taking that. And then you got some small ones here. And obviously, like, you guys can definitely be like, well, this team will be this team or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you guys should already know. Obviously, Bowling Green's going to win against Kent State. Kent State really hasn't shown anything. Ohio's going to beat Eastern Michigan. And Old Dominion is going to do... I think Old Dominion's going to do something here, especially at home. Then you got two teams, both Arkansas and Auburn, have actually both been... completely defeated, I'm pretty sure, in conference play. I'm pretty sure Auburn is 0-4 in conference play, and Arkansas is either 0-4 or 0-3 in conference play. If I'm right on that, so we'll definitely see. I'm gonna go Auburn though. It's only just because they showed their effort to keep it a close game. At least 6 to 7 points minimum, where Arkansas hasn't been too fortunate with trying to win against their in-conference rivals. Yeah, some interesting ones. Obviously, I got UConn beating Rice by more than 10 points. Alabama versus South Carolina. That could be a possible upset, but just the way Alabama is playing, I don't necessarily think too much that South Carolina is going to shake Alabama too much. It really would, if it ends up being a close game, then it's only just because South Carolina's defense is pressuring Ty Simpson the way they need to. And that's really about it. Like, if they keep Alabama from scoring more than 20 points somehow, which is very unlikely, then South Carolina definitely has a chance. But anyway, Missouri versus Vandy, that's going to be a very solid one. Actually, I think the ESPN crew and all of them, they're going to be over there having their morning college football show at Vandy for this matchup here, which can definitely lead into a different, like two different things, where if Vandy wins, then they're not more than likely going to win the college. Not more than likely going to win it. They're more than likely to get into the college playoffs unless for some reason they lose like 3-4 straight. But Missouri and Vandy will keep themselves in this if one of them beats the other one. They'll easily keep now, and then whoever really loses won't end up making it to the college playoffs. And that's as simple as that. Alabama has beaten both Missouri and Vandy. I'm going to say Vandy is going to beat Missouri, but I do think Missouri is going to be putting in a lot of work and a lot of grit, and regardless if they're not at home, they're still going to keep that as a very close game, because the only time, like I was specifying this a week ago when Missouri was facing Auburn, both Auburn and Missouri always kept their games, whether they were this close at winning or this close at losing, it was usually by under 10 points or under. And that's what we can more than likely hope to see with these two teams. More than likely, they're both going to score a lot. And you could probably even say that the total score can go up to like, what do they have it? 53.5. I'd more than likely take the over on that for sure, especially for how explosive Vandy's offense can be, and Missouri, they can be explosive too, as long as there's really nothing going on their offensive line. Where Vandy, there hasn't really been too much bothersome whenever it comes to the offensive line, but even when there was, Diego Paviera was able to scramble, use his legs, get out for at least 5, 10, maybe even 20 plus yards sometimes. Where Missouri's quarterback, I don't think is that quick or that agile, but can still move his feet if he needs to. BYU versus Iowa State. That's going to be actually an interesting one, even though Iowa State is no longer ranked. We still want to see this type of matchup just because Iowa State is at home, and at the same time, they're still a decent squad. I'm not saying that they're like washed up after a couple of losses, but they are still a decent squad. I don't think we should just like let them be like, whatever, Iowa State's been, doing all this stuff, being so inconsistent compared to BYU, who hasn't been very inconsistent but has still lost before, which I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so it will be an interesting thing. If Iowa State, I think they do have a chance, but it would definitely come down to a field goal. I think it's at like 2.5 right now, point favorite going to Iowa State. Yeah. So I would say you take the... I would say you probably take the over on that. It will end up being a tie, and Iowa State will either win by field goal or BYU will just kick the crap out of Iowa State. So, but it'll still end up, it would still be close until maybe like the fourth quarter, if that's the case. But I'm hoping BYU at least, stays there, because, BYU doing their thing and having their team the way it is right now, especially with trying to repeat what they were able to do the last like 2 or 3 years and trying to stay good and stay ranked and stuff like that. It's pretty hard, but BYU's been seeming to be that black horse, so I'm digging it. I think a lot of people would probably want it to be BYU, where Iowa State fans are like, man, why can't you guys want it to be us? But anyway, Illinois versus Washington University. Granted, I did think Washington was going to win the game against Michigan. It pretty much looked like almost the same exact game as what Washington had to deal with whenever they were facing Ohio State. Not saying that Michigan is the exact same as Ohio State or anywhere close this year, but I am just saying that Washington just looked like they couldn't score against Michigan. And if they're having that trouble with Illinois, then I think Washington will still try to make it close, but Illinois will end up beating Washington at home. But again, it is at Washington's house, and they've been pretty good at home so far. So I'm going to have to take Washington beating Illinois, but it will still be a very good scrappy fight. Speaking of people on the verge of possibly getting top 25, even though Iowa didn't start off that good in my eyes, them beating Penn State, like I said that they would, was interesting. Obviously, it still looks like Penn State has that talent, has the chance to be able to beat teams, but without a solid mind at the head coaching position. Not trying to throw any shade at the guy who's the interim head coach right now, but that's not his job. He did not build that squad. James Franklin did. So, realistically, if you get a head coach next year, we'll probably be seeing a different Penn State team. But for now, we did see Iowa beat Penn State regardless, even with what Iowa had, even with what Penn State had. Iowa won, and I do think they'll end up winning against Minnesota, even though Minnesota did have a good, interesting game against Nebraska, who I thought Nebraska was going to win. There's been just a lot of little mix-ups behind the top 4 and the top 5 teams of the Big Ten. Washington State, I feel like, is going to beat Toledo. NC State and Pittsburgh, I'm going to just go Pitt there. Even though NC State seems to be doing okay, it's just, like I said, the inconsistency with some of these college teams. And obviously it is college, so you're going to find more inconsistencies with college than you actually do pros. But still, I think Pittsburgh at home is going to do their darndest to make sure that they win at home. You got some other smaller schools here. And then we got, obviously, Texas Tech. They're going to beat Oklahoma State. Cincinnati should have a good game against Baylor. Baylor has been able to score high even against teams in their own conference. So it could end up being a back and forth game until Cincinnati pulls out like a few solid field goals here and there. Or maybe even like a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and then they'll just be able to win. Right now, Cincinnati's only thing is their defense. That's pretty much it. Texas versus Mississippi State. Obviously, Texas, the only time besides Ohio State that they've been dealing with some trouble was Florida, who they lost to, and I would probably also have to say Kentucky. So if we see, I'm almost certain that we're going to see Texas basically have a very similar game of what we saw last week against Kentucky, or what we saw when Texas beat Oklahoma, I believe. So I do think Mississippi State will just lose at home, but it will still be a very close game. So like I said, it'll either be the Kentucky game or the Oklahoma game that we'll end up seeing. Now, granted, if you give pressure to Archie Manning, you could turn the tide, and you could end up winning by 3 to 6 points just because you did that. But I think Texas is going to get this one. TCU versus West Virginia. Even though West Virginia's at home, there's no brainer there. TCU, no brainer on the Oregon game or the Miami game. You know, you guys see the people that they gotta face. Then you got Texas A&M and LSU at 7:30. You have Boston College versus Louisville, which Louisville has been actually stunning some teams, so I'm gonna go Louisville on that. LSU versus Texas A&M. Texas A&M needs to, LSU needs to win against Texas A&M, not only for Brian Kelly, their head coach, to keep his job, but to also still have a chance at the college playoffs, just to squeak in there. But with it being at home, it can be a lot easier for them. But that doesn't mean that they should think it's going to be easy for them, and they're just going to, think that Texas A&M is going to roll over for them. The last couple of times that LSU has beat a ranked team, besides, I believe, I think, if I'm doing it correctly, because you had Clemson and LSU, I believe, in the first quarter. I mean, not first quarter. Yeah, you had them in the first game. Besides this, because we all know how Clemson is playing right now, the only times that they've faced actual good ranked teams, they've lost. They won against South Carolina, they won against Florida the same way. Or one against Florida, one against South Carolina the same way, if you want to be very technical with that. However, they've always lost against a ranked opponent, specifically their in-conference opponent, but they've always lost against a ranked opponent by 7 or less points. And we were more than likely going to see the same thing. They will either win by a touchdown or less, or they will lose by a touchdown or less. My money, if I had to bet on this game, would be Texas A&M winning against LSU, but we will see what happens. Hopefully I'm wrong for those who are LSU fans, but you know, that is something that we're just going to have to wait until Saturday night. And yeah, Michigan versus Michigan State. I don't necessarily see anything happening there. Tennessee versus Kentucky. Unless Kentucky's defense shows up again like they did last week, I really see Tennessee actually beating Kentucky by a large margin, especially since Tennessee and Alabama pretty much had a pretty good slugfest until they didn't. But it was mainly majority still Alabama scoring, but I still felt like Tennessee is still going to be able to have that opportunity to still be able to squeak into that those college playoffs. Then you got two Big 12 matchups here: Arizona State versus Houston, and then Utah versus Colorado. I am going to have to go Colorado, and I will also go my boys, the Sun Devils, Arizona State, to keep them in the top 25. So, that being said, hopefully you guys liked my preview on what's going to be happening throughout the games. Throughout the week this Saturday, and even tonight on Friday. Hopefully I can get this posted by Saturday morning, or at least have it scheduled to post by Saturday morning, and you guys will be able to watch that before the game. Yeah, before the games all happen. But hopefully you guys hopefully you guys comment, let me know what you guys thought about, like what I thought about, like how the matchups would possibly go. And yeah, I've seen that two of the last videos I posted got a few views. If you are currently watching this video or coming back for more videos, subscribe so it's easier for you to get a notification on when I post a new video. But like I said, until then, you guys have a very nice day, and yeah, see ya.